And Gavin, do you want to start with a little bit of this deep stakes inquiry? You laid it out quite simply. You think Walz is the new frontrunner. Make the case.
Yeah, I do think that Tim Walz will be Kamala's vice presidential selection. We'll probably hear about that tomorrow. It could leak anytime. So, who knows? Make sure to smash that notification bell. Breaking news could come at any time. But I'm expecting that it's going to happen tomorrow. And yeah, I'm gonna etch my prediction in stone. I think it's going to be Tim Walz. And a lot of people, of course, on the left, very excited about Tim Walz. He recently got the endorsement of Bernie Sanders. Pramila Jayapal weighed in his favor. A lot of progressives, especially online, very excited about this guy. But I don't think that's why he's going to be chosen. Don't get it twisted. I don't think that Kamala Harris is, really in touch with the desires of the online left or of the Bernie Sanders left, anything like that. No, I think that really what this is going to come down to is that he represents the safest possible pick for Kamala Harris. So much pretty crazy, scandalous sort of Oppo research has come out in Josh Shapiro over the last couple of days. We've all got quite familiar with the ins and outs of his scandal-ridden record as a prosecutor and, of course, as a political figure in general. We're going to be talking about a couple of those scandals, which are pretty intense, in my opinion. I don't think he can recover from them. Walz, on the other hand, not only is he solid on policy, effective and popular governor, but the guy is just a safe pick. He doesn't seem to have a lot of skeletons in his closet. And I don't think that Kamala wants to squander her momentum in the coming months by having to spend time on the campaign trail defending someone else's missteps and scandals. And like I said, a lot of this stuff with Josh Shapiro, I don't think it's easily swept away, swept under the rug, however you want to put it. I think this stuff would actually stick to the guy. I think it's going to represent a serious electoral liability for the Kamala ticket if she picks him. And I just don't think that Tim Walz brings any of those risks along with him, unlike Shapiro. Let's take a quick look at this article in Puck. The Hack Brain Trust, for what it's worth, would heavily approve of that outcome, that being Josh Shapiro being picked. But the Brain Trust would also be perfectly at peace with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. So, this is kind of pointing out that while the establishment certainly prefers Josh Shapiro, they might certainly be more comfortable with Josh Shapiro. They wouldn't be uncomfortable with Tim Walz. Tim Walz, for what it's worth, in my opinion, has done a brilliant job kind of unifying his progressive leftist bona fides with a more establishment appeal. He also has a lot of establishment connections, having spent 6 terms in the House of Representatives before becoming the governor of Pennsylvania. This guy's close with Pelosi and all the people that matter in the legislature. So that's really important. And it says, that may wind up being a good thing too, because, and please, I beg you, keep in mind the caveats above, my reporting suggests that the decision Harris is expected to finalize tomorrow ahead of the grand VP unveiling Tuesday in Philadelphia will come down to Shapiro or Walz. That Walz has emerged as a finalist has nothing to do with the last-minute Stop Shapiro campaign that's been widely reported today, and equally little to do with the fact that Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders have been talking him up. Walz's status in the mix at the very end is a result of his breakout performance the last 2 weeks, and taking the wood to Vance and Trump, which caught the eye of Harris, those closest to her, and a whole lot of other Dems besides. So, they're saying it doesn't have anything to do with the Stop Shapiro campaign. I think that's probably true, but mostly because they were already aware of a lot of the Oppo research that's been dug up. They already have been vetting these people. They know about every potential red flag. So they're already factoring into their decision a lot of the scandals we're about to talk about with Josh Shapiro. And again, I think through that vetting process, the clear conclusion would be that Walz is the safer pick, the better pick, and the pick that, although he's not from Pennsylvania, I think will help them with the actual voters they really need to win.
I love everything that you said. And in a rational world, I completely agree with you. Here's my only pushback and why I'm still a little bit on the fence that I think it would be Shapiro. In fact, I think it'll be fun for the audience and the two of us. We should bet a round of beers on who it's going to be. You take Walz, I'll take Shapiro. Whoever gets the victory gets the first round for free. A torn label after the pod. But my pushback is that I think it might all be fugazi that they're considering Tim Walz up until the very end. And I'm predicting that all along they'd already cemented in stone that it was going to be Josh Shapiro. I've received a couple of leaks, as I've always shown to you, Gavin, that people had already heavily speculated that Tuesday was going to be when they announced Josh Shapiro. Now they're reporting that it's between Walz or Shapiro. That would be a pretty big pivot. I don't foresee that coming specifically from the mind of Eric Holder, who was put in charge of making this decision. I think he's the kind of guy that goes with Shapiro. He's a guy that's going to look for a coastal elite. He's going to undervalue the Midwest. He's an old school, 2000s era Democrat, right? I just don't see him making the savvy political choice. And I think that what that article in Puck put is
Tim
true.
Walz also kind of a 2000s? I mean, he's more progressive, but he's also just like a normie Democrat. Just because he gave kids free school lunch in Minnesota doesn't mean he's like a radical Bernie Sanders.
That wasn't what I was saying. I was saying that he's from Minnesota, which means he's not as coastal and not the kind of guy that Eric Holder is going to consider. I think that what it's really going to come down to is that they were very surprised at how much buzz and momentum Tim Walz was generating on social media, and they didn't want to extinguish that. So they were playing ball. They're pretending that they're considering him when they absolutely are not. I think it's going to be Shapiro. And I think that Puck article pointed out the most telling thing, which is that they know about all these scandals and they don't care about them. And it hasn't impacted their decision-making process up to this point, which I think bodes really well for Josh Shapiro and really poorly for Kamala Harris when she sees the shitstorm this is about to bring on her. I'm not saying I want her to pick Josh Shapiro.
Yeah.
I absolutely do not. But for people who are listening, I think you brace yourself, because the Democratic Party is always going to deliver a kick in the nuts. Whenever anything good happens, Joe Biden stepped down, we haven't gotten the kick in the nuts yet. That's my line. Gavin's a glass half full guy, and I love him for it. But this week, I'm telling you guys, cover your testes because a kick in the nuts is coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have about a 50% chance of being right. I'll say that. And I have a 50% chance of being wrong. It's certainly between the two of them. It's certainly between Shapiro and Walz. I do disagree, though, that like they already made up their mind. I really think that due to the unprecedented nature of the transition we're seeing, Joe Biden stepping down, Kamala becoming the top of the ticket, it's all happening so fast and unexpectedly that I just don't think they would have had all their ducks in a row. I don't think they would have had all that vetting already completely done and the decision made. I think that Kamala really was finalizing her decision probably last night, potentially this morning. I don't know if they had the guy just already selected. I think there really was a vetting process happening this weekend. I think there really were interviews going down between Harris's team and all the contenders, specifically Walz and Shapiro. Reportedly Walz really charmed Biden too, really put him at ease when they met the other night in DC. And apparently Walz is just really good in person. He makes you feel comfortable. He makes you feel good around him. So I really think that, again, Shapiro not only has all these scandals, some of which we're about to talk about, he also just seems a lot more ambitious. He seems like a careerist Democrat who's trying to get to the top. There was that report that even John Fetterman had warned Harris that this guy's only about his personal ambitions. He cares about nothing other than his personal ambitions. And of course, Fetterman's not exactly the most trusty messenger, but I think he's probably right about that. I certainly get the vibe from Shapiro that he wants to be the next Obama, that he already has his whole plan charted out to become president himself. And I don't think Kamala's going to like that energy. I don't think she's going to like that energy of someone that could backstab me at any moment, who's only interested in this position to ascend the political ladder. And I don't get those vibes from Tim Walz. I get the vibes from Tim Walz. He's more than happy to kind of take the back seat, be the attack dog, be the messenger, go on the media, make the case for Kamala, but not overshadow her, not try to step in front of her, anything like that. But do you want to take a look at this recently published Newsweek article, Zach? I think this dropped this morning, claiming that Tim Walz VP chances surge ahead of Kamala Harris announcement.
Really quickly, if I could just push back on one of the points that you made before we go further ahead. I think all of those things that you said about Josh Shapiro are true, but I actually think that makes him more likely to be the candidate that the Democratic Party goes with. I think his cutthroat instincts, I think his careerism, I think that all of those things are probably going to be rewarded in this instance. But we'll have to see. If I were Kamala, I would pick Tim Walz, but I have to imagine she's getting a lot of different feedback from the people that she said that she put in charge of vetting her VP.
I just don't even understand, though, like, besides him being from Pennsylvania, what even is the case for Josh Shapiro over Tim Walz? I get on paper how he seems like a good pick. He's a Pennsylvania Democrat, popular, but over Walz, I don't even think the case exists. It just seems like if you tried to make the case, it would be like when Cenk tried to make the case. It's like, I tried, but clearly I don't even believe it myself.
I think that what they're going to say is that he's going to have appeal with swing voters, that he's going to be corporate friendly, and that he's going to put the donors at ease, and they're going to all unite behind the Democratic Party. Wall Street will unite behind the Democratic Party. Silicon Valley will unite behind the
That's true.
Boeing, gas industries. They're all going to unite behind the Democratic Party, and that's what they want. They want the power dons of the Democratic Party. They want to appease the donor class. They want to rake in millions of dollars, $4 million from Beyonce, $20 million from White Dudes for Harris, $60 million from Silicon Valley. That's what they want to be pumping into their campaign. And I think that Josh Shapiro signals to those people business as usual. That signals to people Kamala hasn't forgot her roots. She still works for you. Josh Shapiro signals to those people that they don't have to be afraid from their Silicon Valley high rises, that they don't have to worry about Uber, having to pay their drivers as employees. They don't have to worry about antitrust laws coming along. And I think that's the selling point for Josh Shapiro. Cenk's an idiot. He can't make a case for anything to save his life. I think the other thing is that Kamala Harris isn't really that interested in what the youth ceasefire vote has to say now. I think she's more interested in, not being accused of being anti-Semitic. I think she's a lot more, and if she does, take a harder position than Biden to, appease the middle America voter who doesn't care if Israel has the right to defend itself, but doesn't want to see dead kids on the news. I think that's the needle she's trying to thread. And again, I don't agree with any of that. I'm just saying, if I put my prognosticator cap on, that's why she would pick Josh Shapiro.
I certainly agree with everything you're saying. I agree that Josh Shapiro would put the donor class at ease and all that stuff. But again, it's not lefty Twitter that I think is going to get Walz over the line. It's Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi wants it to be Walz. And who has a better relationship with the donor class than Nancy Pelosi? She is the medium of the donor class. She, is the freaking point between the Democrats and the donor. That's why she exists. So
that's true. But they also said in that Puck article that they weren't listening to Nancy Pelosi.
I don't know if anyone.
We don't have to believe the
Puck
article. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I believe the Puck article. I do think that Nancy Pelosi has influence over this process, as she does everything that happens within the Democratic Party. I don't think that if Walz is picked, it's like because Nancy Pelosi just demanded it. Sure. But I do think that she has significant influence and that people really respect her analysis when it comes to this stuff. I mean, clearly she was right to get Biden out of the way.
100%.
She probably has a pretty decent sense of liabilities versus assets and everything. Let's also take a look at the poly market odds real quick, because yesterday Shapiro was clearly in the lead. I think he was at like 80% or in the high 70s. Now it's evened out significantly. Tim Walz is coming up. He's coming up on Josh. I think that, by the end of the evening, it's possible he overtakes Shapiro, because as we saw, he just jumped up another couple points to 43%, clearly down to Shapiro and Walz. I think that, Walz is, I think that there's a very good chance it's Walz, although I won't be shocked if it's Shapiro. I'm not going to, this isn't one of my predictions where I'm like, trust me, guys, 100%, it's going to be Walz. Trust me, bro. Like I'm saying that because of the Pelosi thing for the most part. And I think it just makes the most sense. My gut feeling is telling me that it's the obvious pick from a strategic perspective, but I also don't underestimate the Democrats' ability to just massively screw everything up. But did you want to take a look at this article real quick?
Yeah,
Zach?
let's go ahead and throw this one up here when you have a second. I think you're making great points. I never underestimate the Democratic Party's decision to handicap their own momentum, and I think that might be what they're going to end up doing in this time.
We'll see.
I can make our square a little smaller for people.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I also would like to reiterate, that even if it is Josh Shapiro, I don't think it's going to represent a huge dent in their momentum. Would it be a miscalculation? Yes, I think Walz is the obvious guy. He's right there. Pick that guy, obviously. But even if it is Shapiro, I think they're just going to mostly run on abortion and stuff. He'll temper his message on Israel, and the media will unfortunately not investigate these scandals to the extent that they should. Some of the ones that we're going to talk about in a second. But this is an article published this morning in Newsweek. Tim Walz VP chances surge ahead of Kamala Harris announcement. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz chance of being chosen as vice president, Kamala Harris's running mate, have surged in recent days ahead of the expected announcement, according to odds. He is now the second likeliest candidate to be selected by Harris after the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro. The site collates odds from 11 bookies. 6 of them show
according to you forgot to tell people, according to the odds collector website. That's who it says, according to the
according to odds checker. Yeah. 6 of them show Walz odds shortening. 3 see them drifting, and 3 see them staying the same. Shapiro, meanwhile, is the only other candidate who has any shortening odds according to the bookies. All the other major candidates are seeing their odds drifting. President Biden dropped out, yada, yada, yada. Shapiro has been the bookies' favorite for some time. Speculation about him being the pick has grown as Harris' campaign said she would reveal her choice ahead of a run of rallies that begins in Philadelphia, which is in Shapiro's home state. So, yeah, I think that while it certainly is true that most signs point to Shapiro, I also think it's true that the Democrats would be stupid not to put out trial balloons to gauge the public's reaction to Shapiro. So, of course, there's going to be all these leaks saying, like, oh, trust me, it's Shapiro, guys. They're going to put that out there to see how people react and respond, to see what kind of stories stick and which don't. And, well, we're about to find out some of those scandals. And I don't think they're going to be very recoverable from Shapiro's perspective if he is picked. But let's take a look.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add, though, is that it would be such a fucking FU, just a middle to Josh Shapiro's fucking face to have Tim Walz come out as the VP in Philadelphia. That's the other thing, guys. They can put out all they want about how, oh, it being in Philadelphia isn't a signal for anything. Of course it's a signal for something. You think they're going to parade Tim Walz out in Philadelphia after the entire media class just made a race out of him and the other guy? That'd be humiliating for Josh Shapiro, and he would be pissed off.
I mean, he'll be pissed off if it's not him for sure. I don't think that the Philadelphia thing is too significant. Like, they need Pennsylvania. They want to kickstart the campaign in Pennsylvania to make a big statement, regardless of who the VP pick is. So I don't necessarily think that's like hugely significant, but again, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not going to be shocked.
Let's go ahead and take a look at this article. Or is this the one you were talking about, this scandal, Gavin?
That's one of the first ones. Yeah.
This is crazy because we talked about this a little bit on Circle Jerks last night, but we can get into it for the first time on the Vanguard. This is the one thing where I was like, okay, if they haven't made up their minds, or if they had made up their minds, this is one thing that I think could cause the levee to break and for them to be like, holy shit, we have to pivot. We don't want a JD Vance situation on our hand, which is the one thing that I think does keep Walz in position. I don't think they want to repeat the mistakes that Donald Trump made. He basically handicapped all of his momentum that he built up in one weekend. So anyway, this article comes out, or rather this tweet comes out, re-emerging an article, resurfacing it, I guess I should say. And he says, imagine Kamala Harris having a running mate, Josh Shapiro, who may have helped cover up a murder of a school teacher, sinking her chances at beating Trump. And what a perfect foil to the Tim Walz. He was a school teacher. He was a high school football coach. Now Josh Shapiro is being accused of helping cover up the murder. And guys, let me just tell you, don't go anywhere. The more we tell you about this murder, the more it becomes absolutely apparent it was a murder, not a suicide. However, the cover up was so messy that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has agreed to examine part of it just 4 days ago. Shapiro, who saw stab wounds on the back of her head, agreed it was a suicide. So right there, Gavin, what would you add?
Yeah, I mean, this one's absolutely crazy. Is there any chance we could pull up the article?
Oh, yeah, I'm grabbing it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because this is a damning case, guys. And I found out about this for the first time last night when we recorded Circle Jerk with Griffin. Crazy story, guys. Crazy story, guys. I don't know how this guy survives the vetting process, to be honest, after the Harris team gets a load of this, because it seems like an open and shut case to me. And I know we need, more information and more details, but I don't know how the hell anyone could possibly rule this a suicide. This lady was stabbed 20 times, and not just like in her chest, like, you might if you were trying to kill yourself, or in the neck, or, in your arm. Usually if you're stabbing yourself to death, you're going to like slit your wrist.
Slicing motion. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe your like throat if you're really ballsy.
Who would do that?
But let's take a look at the knives and, where the stab wounds actually were on this poor lady, because I think you guys are going to realize pretty quickly that it definitely wasn't a suicide. This was certainly a murder.
Yeah. And Gavin, well, I'll go ahead and read from this. If you want to see if you can find the actual report from her death, what's it called? Where the autopsy report. Yeah. If you go over the autopsy report, we pulled it up last night. It's got multiple jab wounds into her front from, I think it's actually from here, and then the back of her head. But let's read from the Philadelphia Inquirer, just so you guys have all the information, because this story is absolutely batshit. Okay. The state's highest court will take on one of the city's most confounding death cases, that of a Philadelphia first grade teacher, Ellen Greenberg, whose death by 20 stab wounds in 2011 was ruled homicide before being switched to suicide. So that's important. In an order issued Tuesday, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania granted the appeal filed by Greenberg's parents, Joshua and Sandra of Harrisburg, of a Commonwealth court ruling last year that prevented their case against the city of Philadelphia from going to trial. In that case, the Greenbergs seek to have the manner of their daughter's death changed from suicide back to the homicide or undetermined. The Greenberg Center City attorney, Josh Pedraza, said his clients were elated and moved to tears when they learned their position to appeal was granted. We can move down here and learn a little bit more about what actually happened. She says Greenberg, 27, was found by her fiance, Samuel Goldberg, in the kitchen of their Manayunk apartment with a 10-inch knife lodged in her chest on January 26th of 2011. Investigators on the scene treated her death as a suicide because of the apartment door, which Goldberg said he broke down, was locked from the inside. There were no signs of an intruder, and Greenberg had no defensive wounds, police have said. But the next morning at the autopsy, then Assistant Medical Examiner Marlon Osborne discovered a total of 20 stab wounds to Greenberg's body, including 10 to the back of her neck, and ruled it homicide.
And we have the picture here if you want to.
Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and switch over so everybody can take a look here. Guys, does that look like a suicide, Gavin? Is that how you're going to take yourself out if you had to? If you're so defeated by life, is this, what you think is the easiest way out?
Yeah. I mean, obviously not. And I think this just really calls into question Shapiro's integrity. There's also a report that the, person who was suspected of, or the family of the person suspected, donated to the Shapiro campaign, something along those lines. And, this is just the kind of story that like right-wing media is going to go absolutely crazy with. And for good reason. I mean, it's Oppo research served them on a silver platter. Of course they would go crazy with this. But if you're Kamala, if you're the Harris campaign, do you want to be dealing with this? Seriously, ask yourself. If you have two options, one of them has this on their record, and you're going to have to deal with explaining it and defending it. The other one doesn't. Seems pretty obvious which guy you go with. Am I wrong? Like, this is scandalous. This is scandalous. It's not just a fake news story that the right wing is going to go crazy with. It actually is a legitimately concerning aspect of this guy's record as prosecutor, suggestive of serious corruption, cover up. It's a really bad story for Shapiro, in my opinion. It really does not speak well to his credibility. And we'll see. It's possible some evidence comes out that totally exonerates Shapiro, and it turns out to be all a misunderstanding or something. But as of now, from what I can see, this does not seem terribly ambiguous.
No, I mean, they dead ass asked him if he thought it was a suicide, and he said yes. And you can draw donation money from the alleged killer's family to Josh Shapiro. He has since recused himself and said he won't comment on it because he's not a fucking idiot. This is a career killer, no pun intended. But this is the one thing that I think could be, the straw that breaks the camel's back. But Gavin, Josh Shapiro, he's the kind of guy that double dips. He goes to the well multiple times. There's not one but two scandals out about the guy. If we want to take a look-see here, this is the first one that I was raising a lot of alarm about because I thought it was going to be used to kind of discredit Kamala's approach. Now, you could say, well, we're comparing the guy that has 36 felonies, has, been found guilty of raping E. Jean Carroll in a civil suit, right? The comparison isn't there, but we know how right-wing brains work, and they'll be like, see, the left only cares about it when right-wingers do it, regardless of how severe it is. Now, this is what happened with Josh Shapiro. A top aide to the governor resigned amid sexual harassment allegations. The question remains, how much did Shapiro know? I'll tell you how much it matters he knows. Zero, because, again, this is just easy oppo for the Republican Party.
Yeah. This is another one. Apparently, Josh Shapiro may have covered up sexual harassment. And again, is it the biggest bombshell ever? No. But if you're Harris and you're trying to run a very pro-woman campaign, why would you want to have to defend this? Why would you even want to have to talk about it? I just don't understand, again, why you would put yourself in the position on the campaign trail when all the momentum is on your side to have to defend this kind of stuff, to have to even talk about it or address it or allow it to be dredged up by the media in relation to you, next to your name. I don't see why. I just don't see why. Walz seems to not represent liabilities even remotely as severe. He seems like he genuinely just doesn't have any skeletons in his closet. Obviously, I don't agree with every political decision that he's made, every executive order that he's made, stuff like that. But that's all within the realm of politics. That's all within the realm of like decision making and everything. This is potentially scandalous stuff. This is potentially a huge indictment on Josh Shapiro's morals, his ethics. You know what I'm saying? Why would you want to get in bed with that if you're Kamala? and you already are riding high on this sort of momentum.
That's
my takeaway. But like I said, I'm still not going to be shocked if it's Shapiro, guys.
Yeah, it also right here I think is really interesting. One of the flagship accomplishments of Shapiro's career is that he was able to effectively go after sexual misconduct in the Catholic Church. It says in this article, the woman's claims raise question about exactly how much Shapiro knew about Vereb's alleged behavior and why months elapsed between the complaint being made and his departure. They also threatened to cut at the heart of the governor's political identity. While previously serving as Attorney General, Shapiro was at the forefront of combating sexual misconduct in the Catholic Church. He released a high-profile grand jury report into sex abuse by Catholic clergy. He has also positioned himself as a staunch defender of women's rights and legal abortion in the state. In an interview with Politico, Shapiro said he could not respond directly to several questions, including when he first learned of the complaint and whether he asked Vereb to leave, but he pointed to his history of fighting sexual harassment interviews. So basically, he blew smoke up his own ass and obfuscated, right? Just like a politician would. Will it stick? Will it impact Kamala Harris's decision? Gavin and I can only hope. We can only cross our fingers because I do think it is a political liability for him to be the VP. And I don't think he's necessary to win Pennsylvania. I think we're on the same page about that, Gavin. I can pull up a poll from earlier today if we have a second, because it shows that Kamala is leading pretty handedly. And obviously it's one poll and people can say the margin of error, but if you look at how far behind she was when she took the, mantle up, if you will, we're now looking at polling that says 2020 Pennsylvania general election, Harris 50, Trump 46, Oliver 2. That's a pretty swift change in the right direction without having to debase your campaign and go off track to get Josh Shapiro to be a running mate.
Yep, 100%. And it looks like many of the general election polls themselves are also starting to reflect that reality here. You guys can see new general election YouGov poll has Harris up 3 on Trump. So she's eking out of the margin of error, guys. That means she's actually taking the lead. It's no longer up for debate. Poll after poll now shows her actually in the lead. Again, outperforming the margin of error.